with us and be with us as we parse this agenda, Father. Pray that your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven.
Let's pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anybody see him coming?
No, he's not on your committee. He's just coming to listen.
We'll go ahead and wait for a few more minutes.
You're just coming to be here. Good.
Yeah, pretty good. And there's a little bit of leaks, but other than that,
Yeah, my standing ovation. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start with Human Resources Committee meeting. And first order is consideration of amendment to the Garland County Personnel Policy. Trust everybody had an opportunity to read the ordinance. And basically, this is to amend the Garland County Personnel Policy relating to nepotism, employment by multiple county offices, background investigation, drug testing for the prospective employees, catastrophic leave, declared an emergency, and other purposes. Entertain a motion to approve.
I vote for a due pass.
Second,
Is it just him and I?
what'd you say?
Yeah.
Okay, any discussion on it?
It's
Okay.
good. Whoever's idea, I'm not on the committee, but these are some great changes. So, Judge, I don't know who in your office came up with this, but this is some really good stuff that we're putting in to prevent nepotism. So, good job on your part.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question I'd like to pose to the county attorney. I had mentioned it to John when I came in. It was something I just had some concern about, so I mentioned it to John, and I figure if I had concern about it, some of us other members may. Section 4 deals with pre-employment drug testing. And I had asked John about how those individuals who may make an application for a job with the county and may have the right to use medical marijuana would be uh, impacted by this. John, would you care to expand upon that for us, please?
Sure, just training. We already have a policy, a separate policy on medical marijuana, and effectively the law treats it like a prescription. However, if medical marijuana can be a disqualifier for a safety sensitive position, so the positions such as law enforcement, if you carry a gun, if you are operating equipment, driving trucks, if you deal with confidential information, sensitive information, or money, any of those types of things would be a disqualifier for a person with a medical marijuana card.
Very good.
Thank you, does that answer your question?
It does. Very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I had one other issue I would like to address.
Okay.
It doesn't really impact in any real way, but I just wanted either John or the county judge to comment on it. And that is section 6 that allows the county judge or his designee to make editing and formatting revisions. Now, I can understand what that is, and that isn't anything that would be threatening in any way, but can you give us a couple of examples of what you might be doing?
Sure, that's the scenario where we need to codify something. We need to take it from ordinance form where it just says this is an ordinance to actually putting it in a code, and we need to renumber something, or we need to re-letter something, or we need to put it in a way that it reads better in the format that the code is in. It's anything that allows the document to be a better functional document without altering the meaning of the document.
Very good.
Nothing substantive.
Thank
And
you. I appreciate
just
it.
for what it's worth, Justice Rainey, that's been in there for years.
Yeah, it's just an expanded definition. That's all. I wanted to get it into the record. Last week, Mr. Chairman, a question, who made the motion on
I believe Dr. Peach made it.
Dr. Peters? Did you include the emergency clause in that? Okay, just ask.
Okay, you want to amend your motion?
I'm due for emergency clause.
Who did the second on it?
If nobody else is seconding it, I'll second it with the emergency clause.
Okay.
Chairman Anderson, I said one, after he mentioned section 6, I just noticed this could be resolved afterwards, but there's section 6, section 5, section 6, section 7, it's just a little typo that needs to be corrected at some point in time.
We will get that straightened out before it comes for the full board.
You do not have the correct one.
Okay,
To everyone before we move on that, that's apparently the earlier draft of that because I corrected that section 5, 6 thing before it went to go out in the packet. And the only correction was the change of those numbers. So we'll get that fixed for you.
Think we
Yeah, I
should
missed
use
that
6,
myself.
7, 8 there? 7, 8, 9.
yeah, I missed that one too. Okay, any other questions? All in favor of the motion?
Did you ask for approval?
Yeah, yeah. That's
I
right.
thought I did.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you.
Oh, okay,
I vote yay. Yes, whatever.
okay. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Here be none, be forwarded on. Okay, the next part deals with presentation of the Arkansas Department of Health and Mental Health. It's a pilot program. And that actually, I guess, goes to public health, safety, and welfare. But you want to talk about it a little bit, Judge?
Sure. We've got a couple of representatives here from our local health unit, Susan Lister and Chris Rowland. They'll come forward and kind of give you an update on it and tell you what's going on. I just thought it was a good program for our community, and we were selected for this pilot program, and I wanted them to come present to the court and the Public Health, Welfare, and Safety Committee about what they've got going on over there and the good things they do for our community. And that probably isn't turned on.
Test.
Yeah, it's on now.
Judge, if I may, I've presented, can I present some,
I can't hear you.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
If I may approach, I've got some documents prepared.
Susan, if you're more comfortable, you can pull that out of there and walk around. You don't have to stand right there in front of that. It comes right out.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. So I was asked to come present some information to you today regarding the governor's proclamation. It was an executive order that was signed on March the 6th. And the way it affects us here in Garland County is we were named as one of the counties that's going to be part of the pilot for this program. Inside your packet is a copy of the proclamation, and I've highlighted some. So, Judge, tell me if I'm talking too long. Okay, okay. So,
Excuse me just a minute. Can y'all hear her out there? Is there any?
is it on? Okay. I've been told I'm soft-spoken. I'll try to hold it closer.
That's better right there.
Okay. So, like I said, on March the 6th, our governor signed into an executive order this initiative to support moms, protect babies, and improve maternal health. And as you know, at the Garland County Health Unit, we're here for Garland County. We're state employees serving Garland County and surrounding areas. So there were 5 counties selected in the state of Arkansas. Also in your packet, there's a map of the state of Arkansas, and in the center of that, in yellow, that's our central region for the state of Arkansas. That's how Garland County was selected, and that's based on the number of pregnancies and moms seeking medical assistance during their pregnancies. So, also in your packet of information, I've provided information regarding the types of maternity services available at our unit currently, and a brochure including the things that we do. So the proclamation or the executive order, the way that's going to help Garland County, hopefully, is we will be given additional resources to help with the services that we already provide and reach out to all the expected mothers in the state of Arkansas and encourage them to get medical help for them and their babies.
I just say thank you. This is an excellent program. Since Arkansas has implemented the anti-abortion laws that it has, this is a very excellent program to help mothers who are in need and their babies both. So I just say thank you to all the work that y'all do over at the health department, and I know you do a lot with team with Change Point, helping them. They send people over that they're serving. So thank you for all that you do. Is all I have to say.
Thank you for the kind words. We appreciate that. We work really hard.
Anybody got any questions for her?
Well, just to give us an example, if you were a pregnant woman and you needed assistance, what does one do? Does one show up at the health department and indicate that and kind of walk us through the process in that?
Yes, sir. That's a
version of
great
that?
question. So we help mothers in different ways at the Garland County Health Unit. We provide WIC services, which stands for it's a federal program, Women, Infant, and Children. So it's supplemental food program. Also, we provide special formula, which that's very expensive. We provide that for people who qualify for those services. For somebody who comes in for pregnancy test, we can refer them for medical services with local doctors. Um, we also work with lay midwives for those women who choose to birth children at home or somewhere. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you plan on implementing immediately to get this done in the timeframe that Governor Sanders requested that you're not already doing currently?
Yes, ma'am. So we have met with the Surgeon General and the Secretary of Health. They've, along with our county health officer, Dr. Jean Shelby, they have come to our unit, and so we're going to reach out to other stakeholders, first responders. We had the coroner's office come to our unit as well. So we plan on reaching out to stakeholders in Garland County so that we can get the word out that our services are available, and to encourage them to come see us.
One more follow-up question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are all of those that's free of charge? There's no charge for any of those services?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Any other questions from the justice? Any questions from the audience? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate you and Chris coming over tonight and doing this for us because it is a great program, and I'm proud that Garland County was chosen as one to be part of the pilot program, and we're anxious to see how it helps our community out.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Let us know if we can do anything for any of you.
Thank you, Susan. You can just leave it alone. Perfect. Thank you, Susan and Chris. Y'all are welcome to stay and enjoy the conversation. You're welcome. Appreciate you coming over to see the deluge that we had. You're welcome to stay for either one. I understand you probably got plenty to do.
Yes, sir, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item is discussion for the need of more public safety staff. Sheriff's here, and I guess he wants to tell us what he needs.
You want to let Justice Rainey take over on that, since it's public health, welfare, and safety?
Yeah, okay, Justice Rainey. Go ahead.
There's a joint meeting.
Let me start off here. I guess the first thing I need to say is our deputy sheriff's doing an outstanding job. And I think anyone that pays attention would know that. They're working hard. They're putting their lives in jeopardy every single day. And I am so grateful for the deputies that we have on board. But we can do better. What we're finding as time moves on is we're running more back-to-back calls than we've ever done before, where we have calls waiting sometimes an hour and a half before they can be responded to. Of course, dispatch is prioritizing the calls that we go to first, our domestics, our violent type crimes. You know, they get a much higher response level than some of the other ones. But people are waiting a long time. And a lot of the calls that we're responding to now require at least 2 deputies to respond to. We never have less than 4 patrol deputies on the street at any given time. But 2 calls can tie up every deputy that we have working on that particular shift. We can do better by getting more deputies on the street. And I think we've long since passed the time that we can get by with what we've got right now. It's time to make a decision. It's time for the community to show support towards public safety and get more deputies out on the street. And Chief Elrod here has some great stats, numbers, and comments that he's going to make that kind of backs that up. Chief, if you would.
Yes, thank you. I'll try to be brief. So I took over at the end of last year, and every morning I meet with the lieutenants from each division, the captains from each division, and we discuss the struggles that our officers are seeing every single day. And one of the first things that was brought to me towards the end of last year is that, oh, we're struggling. We're drowning is the words that were used. And I'm a numbers guy. I like, prove it to me. Like, if we're struggling, if we're drowning, what does that mean? Please elaborate. Because myself and the sheriff, we've always held the philosophy is that we'll work here for 8, 12, 10 hours, however much it takes for the day. And we work for those 8, 10, 12 hours. We're not shy from work. We want to make sure that we're getting the most effective, most efficient out of every single one of our officers agency-wide. So whenever they start bringing to me, well, we're drowning, what does that mean? So some of the information that was starting to be collected, we started going into data collection mode, and we started to see that, well, we are experiencing very high call volumes. Just in the course of last year, we had over 43,000 calls for service, not to include an additional 5,800 different security checks, like storage units are getting broken into. These areas are starting to become high crime areas. So we want to focus over there. So we start dispersing throughout the county, and we start doing everything we can with what resources we have available. And we were still struggling. So I'm trying to figure out, well, why is that? How is that? So I start looking beyond the sheriff's office. And what we were able to find is data, and everything that I'm about to discuss, I was able to pull from the Department of Justice, FBI, Criminal Justice Information Services Division. So what we found is nationwide, the rate of full-time sworn officers was reported at a ratio of 23 to 24 officers per 10,000 population served. Those are for police departments. County agencies reported an average of 28 officers per 10,000 population served. While locally, when we put math number to paper, it appears that we're requiring our deputies to serve our community at a current ratio of 9.4. So when you compare that with the national data, it would suggest that the Garland County Sheriff's Office is 18.6 officers below what is the reported average nationwide. The numbers on the FBI website do not give a clear indication on how they're breaking down those numbers, but we tried to mirror it as best as we could. For example, when we're coming up with the 9.4 officers per 10,000 population, we're basing that off of a population of 61,975. While the Garland County itself is over 100,000, we removed Hot Springs, the city limits, out of that equation, considering that Hot Springs Police Department is serving their own area. When you look at just comparing us to Hot Springs Police Department, HSPD currently has 30.2 officers per 10,000 population, while we sit at 9.4. Little Rock, 29 officers per 10,000 population, while we're at 9.4. Looking at some other counties, again, the counties specifically are not broken down on the FBI's website. However, when we look at Washington County and we do the same statistic that we did for Garland County, we remove the city of Fayetteville or Farmington or Greenland or any other city that has its own police department operating. Washington County Sheriff's Office appears to be operating at a capacity of 18.6 officers per 10,000, while we remain at 9.4. Craighead County, remove Jonesboro from the equation, you're still sitting at 22.7 officers per 10,000. Garland County is at 9.4. While the numbers can be calculated in a various manner, we know that law enforcement has very dangerous jobs. So there's no reason for me to be able to go into all those nuances. But something else that a lot may not realize is law enforcement can rapidly go from a first responder mindset to a medical mindset in the blink of an eye. We're going to an active shooter event. We turn to now we're applying tourniquets and jet seals and things of that nature, which I myself and others are trained on. We conduct traffic stops, we patrol high crime areas, we arrest suspects, and we have numerous ancillary duties. We want to continue to sustain the mission of the Garland County, and we won't waver from that. The more resources we have, the more efficient and effective that will be. And for that reason, we want to continue to satisfy the public to the greatest ability possible. We want to be able to protect the individual officers. As Sheriff McCormick mentioned, there's several calls to include like disturbance calls. Those should have 2 officers going to them at any given time. We have CAD systems inside of our patrol units, and just the other day, we had 3 disturbance calls all happened simultaneous. You don't have enough officers on the street to go to each one of those calls. So one of 2 things has to happen. Either officer safety becomes impeded, and we only send 1 person into that kind of situation, or we're waiting for us to be able to respond to that call, which in our opinion is unnecessary. So what do? We send 1 officer to it, and we start resolving that situation the best that we can. Everything resolves safely in those scenarios, but we know it's a matter of time before a situation becomes too much for 1 officer to handle. And with that is the reason for the request of 10 law enforcement officers, 8 of which would be new positions, and 2 are currently funded that we would like to see sustained. And Sheriff has more information on that for the two positions.
That's exactly right. That was, and the judge has a little more information than I do on that. That was funded through COVID money, and I think it expires next year.
Those two positions were funded through the ARPA fund, and we have to have that money committed by the end of 24, and it has to be committed in the manner of a contract or something of that nature. You cannot commit it in a salary. So we will be losing two positions going into 25 if we don't do something. And to your numbers, Chief, I've watched the CAD a lot, and I see that the officers are going from call to call to call. They don't have time to patrol. They don't have time to make our neighborhoods safer. There's call to call to call to call. And when you have 4 officers covering 700 square miles, you're asking for someone's life to be put in danger. And I just want to bring this forward now because I don't want the blood on my hands. I want to bring this forward and let us make a decision how we're going to provide safe living for all of our people in Garland County and safety for our officers that are out there. You know, it's heaven forbid we get another COVID outbreak or we get a bad flu outbreak, and you may only have one person that can respond to that shift without pulling someone from another shift. And Mr. Martin's going to speak in a moment, and we went through the same thing over there. And it's very difficult to find good people. And when you bring them into a situation where you're understaffed, it's very difficult to get them trained like they need to be before they're on the street. Um, like I say, I will give everything I got to try to get us these positions because I know what you're up against and how long we've been in this situation. When I got on the court the first time in 2005, we talked about it, and I heard, we know we need more officers, but we just can't afford it. We know we need more safety, but we just can't afford it. Well, we need to make it where we can afford it. We need to move forward. We need to bring Garland County up to where we've got safe operating conditions for our staff that we ask to risk their lives for us every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it doesn't stop with them. It goes into the 911 call center. Those people are the first folks to get to hear a problem. And if you don't think that makes for a stressful day, you just got to sit over there and listen to the phone ring 10,000 times in a month. It's very stressful. I don't even like to walk through there. But with all that said, yes, those two positions will go away at the end of 24. And if we don't have some funding to add some officers, then we'll be looking for someplace to try to put those positions back. But we probably need more. But I think that the sheriff would agree that 10 officers, 8 new positions would satisfy us for a while.
And with 8 new positions, that would put 2 additional deputies on each shift.
Okay, I agree with what the sheriff said and what Chief Elrod said. Having been there before, I know they need them, and I think time is.
How are we gonna, I was just gonna ask, how are we gonna go about the discussion on this? Because I've got some broader questions about the funding. Do we want to go through and let 911 give their report and then kind of hit the, that's what I'm thinking. Right. Okay. I agree, Chairman. Right. I agree, Chairman.
And something that we're not too interested in the funding tonight. I want to take a couple of public health, welfare, and safety meetings and have some public input so we've got some insight. And then we want to get exact numbers because we don't want to be asking for something we don't need. Certainly we can have discussion about it tonight, but we don't have exact
That's
numbers
where
of
we'd
what we
like
got.
to go as well. Just get it on the floor, talk about it.
Sure.
So that we can start thinking along the same line. Chief Elrod, I have a question though for you.
Yes, sir.
If you had authority to hire 10 guys right now, based on your interviewing that you do now, the schedule and the way you hire people, how long would it take to fill 10 positions with qualified people?
Well, to get one person in the door, we strive for anywhere between 4 to 5 weeks. Let's assume that somebody dropped their application today. 5 weeks. We'll call it 5 weeks to be conservative. Get them in the door, get them started. There's a 13-week field training officer program on patrol. There's a 13-week additional academy by state law that they have to attend to. Whenever they come back, then they'll be fully operational. If they're going to our criminal investigation division, that training curve is a little bit more. But for a typical patrol deputy, that's what you're looking at. So the relief factor that we have to account for is a little bit unique and that you'll have someone who may be completely non-operational for 26 weeks whenever they first get hired on. Um, we deal with challenges for those that qualify for FMLA, workers' comp, or anything of those nature. We always accommodate them if we can. Uh, but we had just last year alone, we had 3 staff that were out for 700 hours each on FMLA qualified events, which we completely support. Our officers were willing to jump in and help, and we got overtime approved, and we filled slots the way that we needed to continue to serve. But those are unique, the fact that you can't accommodate a light duty post in the sense of firearms in the car, responding to these disturbances. It just can't be done. So those are some of the factors that I answered your question.
It does.
Okay.
The point is that it's not turn the switch on and the light comes on.
No, we have a long road ahead if we're looking at additional positions.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Does anybody else have anything?
Over here, Chairman Ray.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Stephen, given this would be additional to the existing patrols, how many patrol units would we have to have?
Looking at 8 additional patrol vehicles
Mhm.
is what it would take to be able to fill this.
It wouldn't be one because I mean, just off the top of my head, obviously, you have different shifts. With this adding one patrol to shift, why would we need more, that many more cars?
Well, the way that we calculated it is 1 patrol unit per additional deputy that we're requesting. So you would have 8 additional deputies, all in 8 additional units. So they'd be standalone. Right now, we don't operate on 2-man units.
Okay, so we would probably need 8 more patrol units.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
We do home storage at the sheriff's department, so each deputy is assigned, each patrol deputy is assigned a vehicle that he takes home or she takes home.
Thank you.
And that actually gives it a longer life, the way that we're doing it now, home storage.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
It
a
does.
lot of advantages of having take-home vehicles assigned.
It does extend your vehicle life, absolutely.
Chief Elrod, over on this side, Chairman Rainey, if I may, just one more question. You know, some of these other counties and cities have a similar population, or I get the ratios and where you came up with the 10, but we've obviously got a huge tourism base. Not all the time population, but at certain times of year, we've got way more people in Garland County than 100,000. You know, I think if we're going to do this, you know, let's take a one shot bit because our population is growing every day at a time. Do you think 10 deputies? I think we need to do 15 or 16, or maybe that's a question for Sheriff, either one.
Sheriff, would you like to?
Sure, of course, we could justify more deputies, and I would like more deputies. I'm trying to be realistic. We're talking a large sum of money. We're also talking public safety for Garland County. So I think that's something we need to talk about in the upcoming weeks.
Okay, thank you.
It is a good point, that's for sure. Anyone else? Chief Railroad, thank you very much. Appreciate your input.
Thank you, Chief.
Communication Center's next. James? A sidebar. When I called his office today to ask a question, I know his name is Porky, but I figured, no, they're not going to call him Porky in the office. So I asked for James, and they didn't know who the heck I was asking for.
Most folks, if you ask for James, they're not going to know. I've gone by that nickname since before I was born, actually. So, yeah, it's a tough one to answer to James sometimes.
Well, I got you anyway.
You did. That's all that matters.
And before you start, I say, hey, you answered a couple of questions for me, and one I'm going to ask you again. So I didn't know. I figure a lot of other people don't know. Before I say that, I want to tell you, I've enjoyed reading it. I went through it several times. You answered a lot of questions that I had in my mind's eye just through what you provided us.
Fantastic.
Which I think it was well thought out. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
The question I had is, tell me what HCIC is. Maybe everybody else knows, but this poor old boy didn't.
So I've got to say, usually it's John catching me on acronyms. You got me on this one. So ACIC stands for the Arkansas Crime Information Center. And what the Arkansas Crime Information Center is the liaison between the FBI and our PSAP for everything related to the criminal justice information system. And that's the database maintained by the FBI, where all information on criminal activity, arrests, that kind of things, disposition of records, that's where that information resides. FBI mandates that there be a state point of contact in each state. For us, that point of contact is the Arkansas Crime Information Center. They take their directives from the FBI, they pass them to us, and we follow them.
Very good. I assume that all the members of the committee have had a chance to read through it. Does anybody have any questions?
Chairman
Or
Ray, I've
anyone?
got a couple
Go ahead.
questions. You want me to call you Corky or Mr. Martin?
Corky, please.
Corky, okay.
Not old enough to be a mister yet.
One of the things, and this has been one of my colleagues, Justice Young, has talked about this several times in the past, but how does this play into the potential merger of the Garland County and Hot Springs 911 centers? That it may or may not happen, but it is mandated by the state to happen by 2025. How do these positions factor into those additional dispatchers that could be coming into our dispatch center is January of next year, hypothetically?
Got you. Great question. So truly, it doesn't play into it at all. The numbers that I've given you here, based on staffing studies, the amount of calls, that kind of thing, this is what we need right now. In all actuality, one little piece that I left out was some of these numbers were from 2017. And so some of these numbers are old data. Today, at this point, we need much more than this. You alluded to it a while ago, and you're 100% spot on in that we have more people than what our population is daily. Huge tourist town. I put together the 911 PSAP study for the judge that we presented, went over. I had to present it to the 911 board, and I had those exact numbers of what our transient population was daily. I don't want to say what I think they were, because sure enough, I'll be wrong and I'll get kicked. So I don't want to get kicked. I'm not going to try to quote those numbers, but it was huge. And so what you said is rides along exactly with what the sheriff and Chief Elrod are needing and what they're going to need in the future, because what we're taking care of today, I support them 100% on, because I live it every day with them and I see what they do. It's just crazy. That is definitely a consideration, something that we need to look at in the future. As of right now, consolidation does not play any part of these numbers of what we're requesting.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? I have an observation to offer while you're contemplating a question, and that is I like numbers, I play with numbers, and I spend my life primarily there with dollar numbers, but everything converts to dollars sooner or later. What's interesting is that we dispatched for 4 counties, we had 4 agencies back in 17. We're up to 19 now. That's a 475% increase. Now you think about it, not a big increase in numbers, but it's 475%. It's amazing. And when you look at the calls, they're up 147%, just based on the calls that we know.
Absolutely.
And then you take on top of that, the other things that you pointed out in this is that it's not just about taking calls. There are other duties that you do in that center. I would ask you to elaborate on that, if you will, so to speak, so that all of us get a more rounded picture of what actually goes on in the call center.
Absolutely. And thanks for the opportunity. So we also take care of a lot of clerical duties that have to do with the courts. It has to do with the sheriff's office. And one of our big things is ACIC, Arkansas Crime Information Center. We enter, maintain, modify, validate, remove, delete all information that's generated from the sheriff's office and any law enforcement entity that he allows to use his ORI to take reports, enter crimes in the system, that kind of thing. We handle and maintain every bit of that information. We also have clerical duties that we do, some of which are in none of our job descriptions. but there's been no one else for the 6 years we've been in existence that could help us with it, and that has to do with HR, the hiring, the disciplinaries, the terminations, things like that. That fortunately, we got into a situation just here recently trying to hire 5, and we had 200 plus, 300 plus maybe applications, and Judge Mahoney and the HR department stepped up and really helped us out in going through and weeding out some of the applications. Generally, it takes about 13 hours a piece for us to do it, and that's in between our other duties. They were able to get through, designate some time to it, and help us get through some, get some people hired. That answer your question?
It does. But I have a question I'd like to follow up on it. And that is, out of those number of applicants, how many people did you hire?
5.
Right. Okay.
I can tell you that COVID was a big hit. I think we all know COVID come around, and then it became impossible to hire anybody. At one point, just before COVID, I went through 161 applications that myself and our center supervisor processed on our own to hire one.
Hire one.
You talk to Chief Elrod about how long from the time you hire till the time they're on the street. We're in a similar situation. We've always strived to get them hired within 6 to 8 weeks, but we follow the same exact hiring principles and guidelines that the sheriff's office does. And the reason for that is because if they're good enough for the sheriff, then they're good enough for us, meaning the standards, right? So if we follow everything that he does, then he should have no issues with anybody we hire protecting his deputies. So we follow that same process. It's lengthy. When you don't have a designated staff, it takes a little bit longer to get that done.
When you're hiring people, are you trying to hire now people who already know what to do, or are you training folks?
So we definitely give preference to those who have experience, but no, we'll start you out at the ground floor and we'll teach you everything you need to know. We have a basic 12-week training program that when they first start, they go through. Some are able to get out a little sooner. Some are able to or have to go a little bit longer than 12 weeks because maybe they're having a little issues with answering 911 calls and being confident in what they're doing. Maybe they're having problems dispatching law or fire. So some get out a little sooner, some stay a little longer, but all of us have a continuing required education that we have to get every year. Excuse me, I need to grab my water. My mouth's getting.
That's all
right.
That's highly possible. Thank you, and I'm sorry. So our training continues. We're one of, I'm going to say, one of the very few centers in the state that actually have mandated and required yearly training hours that our staff has to meet. And it's based on the level of dispatcher that they are, telecommunicator. Level 1, 24 hours, all the way up to 48 hours for our newly received training supervisor position. So we require continuous training year after year. We go through 12 weeks of required plus 40 hours that the state requires, and then build off of
right. Anyone else?
Chairman
Yeah,
Ray.
Corky, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Are all of your 911 operators licensed to be ACIC operators?
Yes, sir. All of our dispatchers have to be advanced level ACIC certified. That's required by the state. Basically, what that means is they're able to enter, modify, delete, change all the protection orders, warrants, writs, that kind of thing I mentioned earlier. Yes,
Okay.
Justice McGrew?
I do have another question. Are you fully staffed currently, and say you just hired 5 positions, so those positions have been open, and for how long have they been open?
So 2 of those positions that were open that we just filled. And I'll get right back to the second part of this in just a second. Two of those are the positions that the Quorum Court granted us 2 years ago, 2022. We got one of those filled for just a minute, and then that person left and moved out of state. We did get those two positions filled, which almost brought us up to staff. We have one supervisor, shift supervisor, that retired a few months ago. The training supervisor position that y'all gave us a few months ago is where that position moved from. It was just a change of title. And so that one moved over. It is still open. As of Saturday, we had one that one of our new hires been with us 11 weeks that resigned Saturday morning due to some family issues. So at this point, we're truly open to positions. Right now, we have 16 telecommunicator positions. One of those is a dual role as our center supervisor, which also handles 99% of all the paperwork and everything else that we have to do.
Anyone else? One last thing, Corky, when your paperwork indicated that the biggest impact was coming in your day and your swing shift. And it's interesting. I know most anything like this that operates 24/7 has to have shifts. And you're like everybody else, you have 3 shifts. Why is it that the impact seems to be more in the day and swing? I guess that's just because it's more active then? The nights tend to be a little slower?
The middle of the night, yes, sir. So the way our shifts run, we have day shift that starts at 6 a.m. It runs to 2 p.m., then 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. the next morning. So think about this just for a second. You get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, where are you headed? You're headed to your car and you realize that it was broken into and you call for a deputy. So as people are waking up, we start getting a lot of calls. Between that 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock, we get a ton of calls, and the majority of it is people going to work and they found that their car was broken into. Maybe their storage building in the back was broken into, that kind of thing. So high volume of calls. During the day, there's tons more people out on the street, meaning traffic. And so you're dealing with all that. You're dealing with the thefts from the stores. You're dealing with the wrecks. And as you move later into the day, now you start dealing with paperwork that's coming from the courts. Usually about 4:40 in the afternoon, the courts will have processed all of their writs, all of their protection orders, and they bring us a stack about this big that's got to be entered into ACIC. We have a very limited time that we can enter some of those items. Some of them have to be entered. Protection orders, writs have to be entered immediately. Things like a stolen license plate, that kind of thing. We have 24 hours to enter. So you get a stack of protection orders in. There might be 14 or 15. They have to be entered right now. There's no choice. At the same time, at 5 o'clock, people are starting to get off work. And so what happens? They get home at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and they realize their house has been broken into. They realize the other car has been broken into. And so they start calling, and the call volume goes through the roof again. So we really try to keep day shift and swing shift at 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. really saturated. That's not to say that graveyard doesn't handle their share of the calls, because they absolutely do. But it's a smaller percentage. It's 25%, I believe is what it works out to, 25 to 27. So we try to focus our staff on the day shift, swing shift, the 2 new positions that y'all granted us 2 years ago. The full intent of that was to have them work a split shift so that they're covering the busiest parts of days and swings and giving us an extra person there. Unfortunately, we hadn't got to that point yet.
One last question, if nobody else has one. We just had St. Patty's Day. So what's the holiday do? We talked about tourists. There was a question a while ago about how it impacts them. So that was a recent holiday. So what went on then compared to a regular old week?
Increase in calls. So what happens is you get more traffic in. Anytime there's more traffic coming into Hot Springs, it's traveling through Garland County, which means we're going to have more wrecks. We're going to have more intoxicated persons doing things with their family, with their friends at the lake, at the parade, going home. DWIs go up, fights go up once they get home. Spouses get into it because husband might have been out too late. So it affects us every time we have a large event, whether that large event is a St. Patrick's Day parade, the shortest street in the world, or it's Derby Day or the eclipse coming up. It everything impacts us. So you give me a great opportunity to say something that I didn't have in here. And again, what the sheriff and Chief Elrod said, I spent 27 years at the sheriff's office, retired from there and walked down the hall. I agree with 100% of everything that they say. They need the people. We see it every day from our numbers because that's where they get theirs. So I just lost my train of thought, Justice. Could you ask me your question one more time?
Well, I was just asking about what happens when you get a big event going.
Perfect. I
Because
got
I
it
know
back.
it impacts, it's got to impact.
Yes, it does. And you brought it back to me. So I want you to think about this. Every call that we dispatch, let's just use the sheriff's office. Every call that we dispatch to a deputy, we may be tying up 3 of our telecommunicators. So you have a wreck, and we dispatch the county, we dispatch the sheriff's office. Well, we also have another telecommunicator that's dispatching the fire department. We also have another telecommunicator that may be answering 25 911 calls that's coming in at the same time from everybody at Pioneer Junction that's going home at 5:15 that sees this wreck. So I'm definitely not taking anything from the sheriff's office, but it's not seen in the background that for every one call that they're going to, we're handling multiple phone calls. Sometimes pipeline rupture, we handled 260 something phone calls in 20 minutes. And that was with 2 telecommunicators, 10 o'clock at night. So we're always, if it's a serious call, if a neighbor calling about a fight next door, then we may have 2 or 3 of our telecommunicators that are tied up on the phones, 911, radio, and the fire department, all at the same time to get those units dispatched.
If I
Thank
may,
you,
Mr.
sir.
Chair. And Corky, I think you put it in your documentation that it takes a little while to wrap your head around the fact that you never have full staff. You even if you have hired full staff, sickness, vacation, bereavement, things in your document there show that your staff is short, the same as the sheriff's office. You never have full staff. If you've got 15 people working for you and they're tenured and they've got 4 weeks of vacation coming, that's 60 weeks a year, which is more than a year that you're going to be at without staff.
Absolutely.
And to your point a while ago about tying up 3 people, that's about all you've got in there on most days.
You bet. And here
So,
lately it's been 2, sir.
yes, so 3 people to answer all the calls, dispatch the sheriff's office, dispatch the fire, dispatch the Corps. Everybody that they have to do business with comes from those 3 people. And meanwhile, they're also entering the writs and everything that came in that afternoon. So if you want to see somebody that's busy, and that's not just for everybody over there, I can promise you it's not just for everybody. And I think that's why we lose employees sometimes, because they come there thinking, well, this is something I want to do. It's exciting. And it's a lot more than exciting.
Absolutely.
It tears at your heart. They witness some of the worst things firsthand. They're the first ones to receive the call. They get the most emotion. But even when you're full staff, sheriff's office can tell you the same thing. At the detention center, at the sheriff's office, you never have 100% of your people out on the street because somebody is always off training. Training takes a big part of it. There's always something they need to do. So take that into consideration when we start looking at these numbers, deciding what is really needed as far as staff. That you made a good point a while ago, Justice Myers. There's probably a lot further that we could go, but we're trying to be reasonable and try to look forward to the next 10 years.
Absolutely. And couldn't agree more, obviously. And I couldn't agree more with Justice Myers also that we do need to be thinking about the future. It brought me to another thing that's in here that I didn't bring up. I'll touch on it briefly, and then I'll get out of y'all's way unless you have any more questions. And so when I figured in our staffing model, our vacation hours, our sick hours, holiday hours, the actual time that an employee of ours has to work over the year, what's not taken into consideration there is we've got, at the time I typed this, 5 new employees who have 0 vacation, they have 0 holiday time, and they have 0 sick time. There is none of their hours that they're going to start accumulating and over the next 4 or 5 years that they're going to have available to them to take. So if you take this number here, and let's just try to do some easy math, say this is for 10 people, and you add in 50% more, now run the numbers on what your staffing is at. Now I think you're closer to where Justice Myers is hitting with, you need more people.
Good point. Thank you, Corky.
Thank
Everybody
you,
else
sir.
have it? Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much.
Yeah. Prosecuting Attorney's Office.
Justice Rennie, there's no one here tonight from the prosecuting attorney's office, and I plan to have another meeting next month
Very good.
for questions. And I know there's some folks here tonight that probably want to speak, and then we'll have an opportunity. We'll have a little more lead time so we can have those that are interested come back and speak again. And then we will next month we will have prosecuting attorney's office, and I would also like to have someone from EMS and come to talk to us about their struggles right now, because I think that they probably witness those in the call center as well as anywhere else. And I know if you reach out to the volunteer fire departments, they witness some struggles with the EMS as well. Anybody, Mr. Chairman, if you want to call for somebody who wants to speak to these.
Does anyone have any comment they'd like to make? Any audience? George? Jim, I'll get to you in a minute. George, if you will, please state your name.
George Pritchett, 207 Crestwood, Hot Springs. I just want to point out a couple of things. I certainly understand the difficulties that we experience. They're the same difficulties we probably experienced since we became a county, and the city experiences the same thing. Approximately 10 years ago, we voted a new jail. At the time we voted a new jail, we took $2.5 million that year and put it into the general fund and started running a new jail. Started running the jail off when the revenue started coming from the tax people voted on. That's an important thing. I don't deny that you have needs. I don't deny that we shouldn't do something. Just urge you that if we're going to do something, let's put this to a vote of the people of the general election. I'd like to mention that if we start being more successful in deterring crime and bringing people in, I'll be back here talking to you in a few months or a few years, if I live long enough, by the way, that we need to expand our jail. I've talked to the sheriff many times. It's pretty full. We turn people loose early a lot of times. We have a lot of problems with crime. Petty crimes are our big issue. Additional patrol vehicles is going to be costly. I'd like to know how much money that we're talking about for the expansion of deputies, the expansion of the 911 center, so that I, as a citizen, and sharing with other citizens, could probably point people that we need this and why we need it, how we need it, and how much money and where it's going to come from. That's what I'm really concerned about, is where it's going to come from. Our citizens should have the opportunity to vote on it. I point this out. The county just recently raised the trash rate. It was a very nominal increase, but every rate increase, every dollar that we tax people takes away from the money they have to pay rent, a mortgage, food, medical, and take care of their families. We seem to have an ever increasing growing government. I'm not saying that's not obvious and the needs aren't there, but the government needs to look for ways to save and to reduce some costs. And we need to do that as well as asking the citizens for more money. Inflation should be taking care of this, but it doesn't seem to be. So we've grown, our budgets have grown, inflation has grown, wages have grown, but wages have not stayed up with inflation. I know that we just mentioned here the theft that goes on, and you wake up in the morning. I've had shootings in my neighborhood, and I live by the First Baptist Church. You wouldn't think so, but we like to shoot them up in that neighborhood too. Not me. For-profit businesses are also constrained by the same thing that you are, but they can't just raise their prices because competitors won't let them raise their prices. I think we need to think about how we can maybe not provide as many services. I always hear we need to grow services. Dick Antoine, one of my favorite people, he said, everybody wants more all the time. No, 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 we don't. I just want you to know it. Not everybody wants more, but I urge you, if you're going to do something, we have a election coming up in November. Let's put it on the ballot. Let's let the people decide, and let's get out the information now how much money we need to do the things that the sheriff has outlined, that Corky's outlined, and any other things that we think we need. And let's get this all out there at once, because we keep coming back to the people ever so often, and the people always wind up with less. Thank you.
George, I couldn't agree with you more. Your points are well made. My only thing I would say, and beyond that, is that citizens like yourself who are out there who think, you've sat on the Quorum Court, you know what these duties are, you know the responsibilities here, and you know the foils that you can get involved in. But people out there and the citizens need to bring to us to their thinking on ways to address these problems. Spending dollars doesn't always, throwing money at something doesn't always necessarily answer the need. But 13 people up here are sitting here talking, plus all the other people who are involved in the county. And we're going to answer a lot of needs, but we can use some help. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I have offered Judge Mahoney, as I offered Judge Davis before, after I was off the Quorum Court, that I would sit down with any group and I'll play devil's advocate with you, because I really enjoy playing devil's advocate, and Daryl knows that. But I'm also reasonable, aren't I, Daryl? I've been to you on a number of things, and Daryl has satisfied me with his answers. Now, I don't always like it, but he did satisfy me. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you, sir. Jim, you had something?
Jim Carey, 101 Wildwood Forest Road. How y'all doing? Thank you all for letting me speak tonight. Before I came back to Arkansas 13 years ago, I was working for a county. One of the projects I worked on right at the very end was a combined 911 dispatch center. And Sheriff Flaherty, who's our director, one of the things she did, I mean, we combined not only municipal, county, police, fire, sheriff's office, all in one place. And she was actually able to reduce the number of dispatchers that she had from the original facility because of greater efficiencies. And that was in training and reducing. Now, I also served on the 70 West Fire Board as a commissioner. And I know now, and I agree with Corky, that the bulk of the calls they have in the fire department, almost half of them are between 8 and 5 Monday through Friday. And as a result, I don't see a need for one person every shift. Maybe one on day shift. And now, talking about the sheriff's office, I agree. Let's go for more than just the 10. Up until last summer, I'd maintained the sheriff's office crime statistics, and also did evaluations on when their calls for service were. They were 8 to 5 also, Monday through Friday. It's when people are out moving around and things are happening. But one of the things that I did find in there, and it had crime pretty much over the last 8 years has been relatively flat in the county, while it spiked in the city. And the sheriff's office operating a lot fewer people, a lot larger territory. And but I saw over the last 4 years or so, and COVID was probably a lot of it, there were so many domestic calls. We're talking about intimidations, threats, and those are the most dangerous calls that a law enforcement officer has, because they go to help a victim, and the victim ends up attacking the officer, when they get arrested. So there needs to be additional manpower out there and woman power, just to make it safe for them. How this is going to be paid for, I figure cost about $100,000 per year per officer. Is that correct? And so you're talking about $1 million there. And on dispatch, the numbers I got from the state, I don't know if these are right, but the budget on dispatch now is 1.8 million, somewhere in there. That's how much they said their expenses are. That's what they said. And okay, well, it said for Garland County, and 1.4 million comes in from the state. Okay. When the sheriff's office ran the dispatch center, they were running maybe one dispatcher a shift, and their budget was about half that amount. And I know that now that they're doing fire, but it's probably not as much as double as it is now. So and I think it was somewhere around seven to $800,000 was the sheriff's office, with about half the staff. So before we nail down the numbers, because there was one supervisor for the sheriff's office who was a dispatcher, and now we've got deputy director, director, supervisors, training supervisors. Are these people also dispatching? And so, I know when I was a manager, I had a empty, got someone showed up sick one day. They were assigned things to do, and I was the only one to pick it up. And so, we need to look at for the sheriff's office, no brainer. Um, the sheriff has done nothing since he's been in office of making greater efficiency. He's cut down paperwork. He's improved training. He's got better managers. And you remember when he came in, he had to go out and buy used cars to put on the street. And we worked for a little while. And but now I think everybody's convinced that our sheriff's office is pretty good. And how it's going to be funded, I don't know. And but I think that we need to, and we can't really talk about the prosecutor, but and also one thing that's missing in here is the district court. Um, you know, you know,
Can
since
you wrap it up, please? I'm trying to give you the same amount of time they gave George who were there.
well, now that the judges are state judges, they're taking on more of a role from circuit court, and there hasn't been any additional staff on there. And
There has been additional staff there.
okay, but they should be also looked at too at this time.
Yeah, and you're aware, Jim, that it's actually a city department. The employees there, other than the bailiffs, are city employees, and so we split the cost with them on a square footage
Something
basis.
to look at.
So that yeah,
All right.
but there were additional staff added to the judges' chambers.
Thank you, Jim. Committee members, have any questions of the judge or the sheriff or anyone else? Or do we have somebody else in the audience? Well, that helps. If you'll state your name and address.
Number 3, Stonegate, Hot Springs. I
Speak,
promised George today that I wouldn't speak unless he did, and he did. So I'm here to tell you, I think most of you probably remember the Garland Good Government Group. We had some corrupt people in this town and county, and we educated the public to the degree that we could, who they were and what they were doing. I'm proud to say I don't think anyone on this quorum court is corrupt. I'm proud of every member you have now. That wasn't always true, but I will tell you this. A city and a county should not even need a good government group if they're doing things properly. They truly should. And I don't like taxes any more than anyone else. I hate taxes. And I think we're being taxed to death. But there's such a thing as a good tax and a bad tax. When I was with the good government group, we worked hard to defeat the original jail tax because there was no sunset on it. It never ended. And the city was going to build fire stations and pay for radios and all kinds of things. But the tax never ended. So we defeated it. We helped to defeat it. But we still needed a jail. We're proud of what we did to support the jail and get the one that we had, and it's paid for now in record time. And I think it's doing a great job. Our sheriff and his people are doing a great job. But we're talking public safety. Right now, we're talking public safety. And George Pritchett has never seen a tax. I think he has his priorities wrong. He's never seen a tax that he liked. Several people are that way. I don't see any that I like, but there are some that are necessary. Public safety, ladies and gentlemen, is necessary. And I heard the term just a little while ago from the county judge. I don't want the blood on my hands. Think about that. I moved back here, this is my hometown, from Brownsville, Texas. We've got a problem in Brownsville, Texas, in that entire border. And it's going to end up affecting us right here in River City. And if we don't pay attention, 9.4 per 10,000 is a ridiculous number. We need to increase this. We need to support the millage. We need to support every one of you members on the quorum court. Let's go. Let's hire these people.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Russell Thomas, 112 Summer Street, Hot Springs. Judge, I'd like to ask a question. It was brought up earlier about a possibility of a millage on the November ballot, if possible. What's the deadline for putting an issue on the ballot?
I'd have to get with Gene Haley and find out when the deadline is because they made some changes as to when you can have a special election or included in the general election. So I would have to get with Gene Haley and find out that for sure. And I will have before May. I would think it would be at least 90 days prior, maybe 60, but I would think that you're probably correct in July or August.
Just talk a little loud.
Did it turn itself off or the battery go dead?
Green.
We've got another one here that's off for us. There's one in the bag right back there on it. On top should be. The batteries may have went in it, Russ.
Things working now. Okay. So anyway, in 1993, the county was funded by real estate tax, and there was a movement to move that to sales taxes because number one, the tourists would pay it. Number two, that they could collect a lot more of sales taxes than they could out of millages, and there was some resistance to doing so because the city and the county can impose millages up to a certain limit without voter approval. So the city board and the quorum court both made promises to the public that they would implore the future boards to honor it if they wanted to get new villages to vote on those. And I would encourage y'all to honor that promise that was made by those leaders at that time and the public that supported and believed that they would do so. So if you need to go for a millage on this, I would encourage you to do it on the November election this year. It's the fair thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And if that failed and you still have these needs, then I think you just got to kind of work your budget out where you're prioritizing these things over certain.
Hang on, Rose, I'm sorry. Just talk loud.
Those are my points. Is basically, you've got to manage your time, but I think the best thing you should do is to let the public vote on this. Otherwise, you do have to do something, but just something.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, John. I have a specific question. Take long. I will be video. Somebody mentioned, I'm curious about have training like
Domestic violence is on the increase, and every one of our officers does have training in de-escalation tactics.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
So real quick, let's touch on some stuff that my friend Mr. Terry says. Maybe one thing, definitely the sheriff's office needs more. I'll leave you with this. Man, I don't hear everybody says I'm too loud.
I know, but we want to really hear.
So I want to leave you with this. I touched on it a while ago that we sometimes spend 2 and 3 telecommunicators on every call that the sheriff's office goes to. We also talked about the number of calls that's at waiting, the number of deputies that go to certain different calls. So I want you to keep in mind that as we're talking about all the increases in the number of calls that the sheriff's office goes to, the number of calls that the fire department goes to, the number of calls that EMS go to, the number of calls that state police, game and fish, Corps of Engineers, Park Service, National Park Service, all the rest of those 19 that are on that list we deal with. So the sheriff's office isn't the only law enforcement or public safety entity that's noticed this increase. Everybody else has too. I want you to think about this. Every call that every one of them go to comes through us. Every one of those calls that come through us takes anywhere from 1 to 3 people to handle. So as someone who started keeping stats for the sheriff's office in 1994, I built the first spreadsheet, which turned into a huge workbook that was shared by all officers, and it all calculated itself. I understand the stats very, very well, I assure you. It only makes sense, and a reasonable person can see through this or see this without any problems, that if the entities that are dispatching, the entities that are seeing this huge increase and need all these different people is justified, then it only makes sense that the entity that's receiving those, the first responder, their calls are doubling as well. And to add 1 person or a half person or whatever to a shift is like saying we'll give you a half person for every patrol car. And I just want you to keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corky. With that, we will end the open session for the
Justin
public.
Myers had a question.
Oh, it wasn't for Corky. It could be for either one of y'all, actually. There's been talk and there's been no, I know this isn't on the agenda or anything, but there's, obviously this is very relevant to what we're talking about charging volunteer fire departments based on the amount of calls that they go on, say, I mean, the numbers are in here for, I represent all of Lake Hamilton Fire Department, a very small portion of 70 West, somewhere here in the numbers, like we got, Lake Hamilton going on in 2023, 884 calls are being dispatched to them. I'm just like going on them all. And on 70 West, we've got them going to 1,868 calls. I don't know who'd be best equipped to answer this question. If we got these 4 new dispatchers, would that eliminate the need to charge these fire districts for the calls that they're being dispatched to?
I don't think that that particular item would eliminate the need. I think that what the fire departments do in their respective districts and other districts as well across the county, the help they give, cutting up trees, first responders to most medical calls, things that they do, when you weigh it out, much more than what we could charge to dispatch over here. Any new entities that we bring in, if there's a new city, if there's some other party that wants to come in and be dispatched through our dispatch center, then they're certainly going to be looking at some type of charges. Once we consolidate, we're going to have to make up the difference in what it costs. But we've had discussions about it. And in my mind, the things that the fire departments provide for the community above and beyond going to a fire more than make up for charging them for dispatching.
Thank you.
No. Thank you, Court. Addressing all of you remaining JPs, do you have any questions? Any observations?
I've got one, Chairman Rainey. It seems like I'm always the one with something to say. Maybe we'll get out of here quickly if I get my comments out of the way. I don't know about the prosecuting attorney's office because we haven't heard on that. I'll hear next month. But I mean, based on what I've heard tonight, it's a no-brainer that we need the 4 positions in the 911 and 10 or possibly, I'd like to see 15 or 16, to be quite frank with you, in the sheriff's office. But whatever number it ends up being is what we need. Whatever y'all think we need is what we'll go with. But I do agree with what the public comment has been tonight, that if there were to be, if it's a sales tax, obviously that would have to be voted on by the people regardless. We can't impose that. But if there were to be a millage increase, I personally cannot. Everybody knows me. I'm a huge advocate of law enforcement. I would not be in favor of the Quorum Court voting to impose the millage without it going before the vote of the people. I think that it's very important that the people be heard on this. Hey, I'm a real estate broker. I'll say from my personal opinion, I would much rather this be a millage than a sales tax increase, because the sales taxes are high as can be right now. And yes, the tourists do benefit from the services that the 911 dispatch and the sheriff's department and everybody provides. But, a lot of these crimes or calls take place on private property. So I think a millage is where we need to go with this, not a sales tax, in my personal opinion. And I think that if we could get it on the ballot for November, whatever millage is necessary to pay for all this, it sounds like we're needing about $1.5 million to $2 million a year, something like that. Just rough numbers, obviously. Maybe a little bit more, actually. I think let's do it. Let's go forward with it, but let's let the voters decide. And hey, I'll be the first to volunteer to help on the campaign to get it voted on by the people. I'll campaign in my district and outside of my district to get this thing passed. But I do think we need to let the voters decide. But I think the faster we can get this out and the faster we get public awareness on this. Obviously, we don't have as good of attendance here tonight as I'd like to see on something this important. And Chairman Rainey, you're spot on when you're saying you wish more people would come and give input. I agree with you 100%. But I think let's do this. Let's go forward with it. But let's let the people decide in the election.
Thank you,
We'll have another public health, welfare, and safety meeting in April. And if we have a lot of public input and there's some more that want to talk, then we'll have one in May. I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to maybe give us some ideas that we don't know, bring something forth that we're not aware of. But I'm with you. We've got to have it.
Jimmy, you wanted to say
Oh,
something?
yes. I just hopefully in that meeting, that upcoming meeting, you did a good job. I think last July telling us where 911 merger was possibly at. 2025 is not far off. I believe it's 2025 that the state had the mandate. I'd like a refresher, which will relate to a merger and staff and so forth. If you'll plan on giving
Sure.
us everything we can hear,
Sure, we'll
pros and
bring that forward.
cons of where that stands in our next meeting. I appreciate it.
We'll bring it forward.
JP's, anything else? Not? Judge, do you have anything else?
I do not.
Move
Looking
to
for a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you much.